Hey, this is Jeff Ratcliffe here. Let's talk about the value in daily fantasy for a minute. The big prizes, yeah, they're attractive, but you have to finish in the top 2% out of thousands of experts to win any real money. So even on your best day, you still feel like you're losing. Now you can play something better. Stat Hero. Stat Hero is a house-based game that combines the best of daily fantasy and survivor pools. Each Stat Hero contest lasts multiple days, but requires only one entry fee, so your money lasts longer. Yes, you can play multiple days with only one entry fee. Stat Hero gives you a smaller contest and more chances to win, and no more competing with sharks or experts ever, because your only competition is Stat Hero itself. Survive the game and download Stat Hero today and see how the face of daily fantasy has changed. Finally, a game designed for the rest of us. Stat Hero now open for NFL and NBA. For more information, please visit stathero.com.
What is up? It's the Pro Football Focus Fantasy Podcast. My name is Jeff Ratcliffe, and it's Thursday, January 2nd, 2020. I swear I will not say 2019. I'm going to say it 100 times in the next couple weeks. But hey, we're back. Happy New Year. Excited to be here. The first podcast of the decade. Excited to do that. And of course, excited for Wild Card Weekend, the NFL playoffs starting. And you may have an NFL playoff league draft tomorrow, maybe. Usually they're on Friday. Maybe you do it on Saturday. But it's a lot of fun, that format. I am getting a lot of questions right now on the interwebs about the various formats. The rankings on today's show are going to focus on that draft-style league. So the draft and hold, you draft them, you get them for the entire playoffs. Nobody else owns them. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to talk about one and done. So I'm going to break down the games. We'll talk DFS, one and done, and player props. Oh, there's a lot to do on tomorrow's show. But today, just a quick one. Really want to solidify these rankings to set you up for your draft. If you didn't listen to Tuesday's pod, I set up the strategy for drafts, and really the number one thing in terms of strategy is determining who you think is going to win. And I don't really, it doesn't matter who wins the Super Bowl, it's who gets to the Super Bowl. So the way I have it set up, the Super Bowl, my picks are New Orleans and Kansas City. Not too crazy, right? Not too chalky either, though, because if you're super chalky, I really, I've learned over the years of these leagues that the chalky teams that I've drafted are typically the worst teams. So you have to differentiate a little bit to really have some success in these leagues. So make sure you go through all of that. And of course, we can help you in that process. Just search out the article that I put up. It's actually at the top of the feed there at pff.com on the fantasy tab. And you'll see playoff league strategy plus rankings cheat sheet. And we have you set up for Wild Card Weekend as well. But let's dive into these rankings. And I'm not going to do all 175. Yes, I ranked 175 players for you. But we'll do a good chunk of the top to really set up the overall strategy. Now, the key, obviously, is getting as many games out of players as possible. But you can't just think along those lines because, well, your team's not going to ultimately capitalize on guys who maybe only play one or two games but put up more points than some of the other guys who make it deep into the playoffs, right? That happens every single year. There's guys who go out, they may play one game, but if they're a stud player, they could put up more points as a running back than the number 2 running back on the team who plays 4 games and goes to the Super Bowl. Yes, I'm talking about, on my board, Dalvin Cook compared to somebody like Latavius Murray. But anyway, we'll get into that here, but I really wanted to set that up at the start. Also, the other key at the start, before you dive into these, and you may have done these before. If you haven't done them before, you may not know this. If you've done them before, you probably do. But quarterbacks are freaking important. It's the exact opposite of a season-long league. In a season-long league, there's so much depth that if you're in a league that starts one quarterback, you can wait, right? Late round quarterback, it works every year. Ask any Lamar Jackson owner this year how it worked, or even a Jameis Winston owner. How did it work this year? It worked pretty darn well. It works every year. It works every year as long as you're targeting the right guys. In a playoff league, if you wait at quarterback, you are going to be stuck with Kirk Cousins. And good luck with that one because it's not good. It's different. There isn't depth at the position because we only have 12 teams. And on top of that, if you get the worst quarterback, he's out after one game, right? So not only did you have the lowest scoring quarterback, but you had just one game out of him. That is not going to do your team any good. So quarterbacks, really important. That's why at the top of my list, I have Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, number one. Now, keep in mind, I don't have them going to the Super Bowl, but I do have them playing over 2 games based on what I talked about on the last podcast. So even if, let's say Lamar plays 2 games, Lamar could score more fantasy points in those 2 games than, really almost anybody else at the position. Even if you get 4 games of Drew Brees, there is the possibility Lamar outscores him with just 2 games, right? Now, of course, I'm not predicting 2 games, a binary 2 games for him and a binary 4 games for Brees. Like either they play or they don't play. Remember, I'm breaking it down to decimal games played based on percentage chance of playing of these next games. So anyway, Lamar comes in ahead. So he's number 1. At number 2, I could go Brees, but I didn't. I went with the most valuable player, arguably, other than Lamar Jackson on any team right now, and that is Michael Thomas, any playoff team that is. Michael Thomas, so important, coming off this massive season where, obviously breaks the record. He puts up almost 150 catches. He's catching over 80% of his targets. Now, granted, he's not being targeted 18 yards downfield on average. It's very low. You're talking basically about 8 yards downfield on average. So, of course, his catch rate's going to be higher. Even with that catch rate is phenomenal. And on top of it, he's going to see his share of Xavier Rhodes in this contest here in Wild Card Weekend to get things started. Xavier Rhodes is allowing 84.5% catch rate. Now, more about that tomorrow. I'm getting excited for Wild Card Weekend. But Thomas, especially if we do get these 4 games, Thomas could very likely be the highest scorer, non-quarterback scorer, of course, in playoff leagues. So super valuable, high floor, high ceiling. We saw it in the regular season. Phenomenal. And then to go right after that, I have Drew Brees. Again, if you get a guy who you could potentially have 4 games out of, that's obviously very good. Now, here's the thing. If you drafted Lamar in the first round, obviously you are not going to get Drew Brees. It's not going to happen. He's not going to come back to you. And typically these leagues, you're drafting 2 quarterbacks. There are 6 teams. Now, what I often recommend is, if you want to get more folks involved, like you can add more teams, but typically 6 works the best. So partner up. That could do. If you get a partner, then you could have multiple people. You don't have to have just 6 people in your league. Anyway, with Lamar, if you draft Lamar, you're not going to get Brees. And typically what I like to do is grab a guy from the other conference. So if I get Lamar as an AFC guy, I want to get an NFC guy. Now, I don't want to end up with Kirk Cousins, but honestly, if I grab Lamar, you know who I'm targeting? I am targeting really whoever I think is going to win between Seattle and Philly. Now, I personally think Seattle's going to win, so I am targeting Russell Wilson. And right now with Russ, I have him in a reasonable spot. I actually have Russell Wilson as my number 6 quarterback overall. He's down. I have him at 32, but I really think you could be looking at him in about the 4th round, maybe 5th round if you want to risk it. And here's the thought process behind that. I do think that you're going to see Brees. You'll see Mahomes. I'll talk about him in a minute. Then I think you're going to see possibly people go after Watson and Jimmy G. If those who have the 49ers going all the way to the Super Bowl are going to possibly take Jimmy G ahead. But those are the only guys who I have ahead of Wilson. After that, it's pretty close. And I think it really, part of why I have Wilson a little bit lower is that my confidence level for the Seahawks winning against Philadelphia isn't as high as some of these other guys. However, that being said, you pair up Lamar now with a guy who, let's face it, if the Seahawks do make that run to the Super Bowl, which stranger things have happened in the NFL, you certainly can't count a Pete Carroll coach team out. You now just got Lamar and a quarterback who played 4 games, you're going to win the freaking league. You're going to win the freaking league. So that's the approach I'm taking. I'm not going to target another AFC guy because then you cannibalize off yourself. Same thing. Drew Brees. If I draft Drew Brees, I might, I would potentially look at Deshaun Watson if he goes in the range I have him ranked. Now, I have him as the number 4 quarterback, but at 21 overall. So you're talking, again, 4th round, you could be looking at, and maybe 3rd round, you could be looking at Deshaun Watson. If you really want to get the quarterback out of the way and you want to just check that box off, Deshaun Watson. That's a nice little pairing there of Brees and Watson. You could wait a little bit longer if you think that, for example, Houston loses. I don't have that on my board, but you may think the Bills are going to win. If you think that's the case, you could wait a little, I think even a little bit longer for Josh Allen. Josh Allen may be more of a 5th round or a 6th round guy, probably more like a 5th round guy, the way the quarterbacks go. You could get away, and hey, I mean, if Josh Allen wins a game, if he wins 2 games, man, oh man, you're going to rack up points with him. And of course, if the Bills do make that magical march to the Super Bowl as well, you're going to win your league very likely. So anyway, that's the approach I'm taking. I'm going to go to the other conference based on the quarterback I'm taking early. And if I have a top 3 or 4 pick, I'm very likely going to use that pick on a quarterback, even though I have Michael Thomas ranked 2nd. It's really close between Thomas and Brees. Somebody has to be at 2, somebody has to be at 3. At 4, though, the aforementioned Patrick Mahomes. Now, if you took Mahomes at 4, you're in a very similar situation to the Lamar guy or gal, and you're going to want to target an NFC guy, and you're not going to want to do so necessarily in the 2nd or 3rd round. It's probably more like a 4th or 5th round thing, and I think picking your poison with the Seattle-Philadelphia winner is the best bet. Keep in mind, I only have the Packers playing 1 game. So if you might be thinking, well, what about Aaron Rodgers? That's why I'm avoiding Aaron Rodgers. With quarterbacks especially, I'm more willing to shoot for a running back or wide receiver who I think is going to lose in only play 1 game and still put up decent points, as opposed to doing so with a quarterback. So just keep that in mind there, and that's how I'm approaching this. All right, so Mahomes at 4, I have them going to the Super Bowl, so it shouldn't be a big surprise that he is this high. The only reason Brees is ahead of him is because I have the Saints. Hey, if the Saints go to the Super Bowl, they play 4 games. Chiefs would only play 3. Kamara comes in at 5. Hey, starting things out, this will be interesting because Kamara ended the season on a high note for sure over the last 2 weeks, but he did take advantage of some good matchups over that span. There aren't a lot of good matchups for running backs in the playoffs. That shouldn't be a huge surprise. Not going to get those matchups, but you do expect the team to lean on him. At 6, I have Travis Kelce. Now, here's the thing about setup. When you set these leagues up, I personally go with this approach. So it's a 6-team format is sort of the standard. Every team will get and has to get 2 quarterbacks. Every team will get and has to get 2 kickers and 2 defenses. Whether you like kickers or not in the playoffs, come on, just freaking use them. From there, I don't like requiring teams to start a set amount of players. I don't like you have to start 2 running backs. You have to start 2 wide receivers or 3 wide receivers like we do in the regular season, and you have to start a tight end. Instead, I think that all of those guys you should just flex. So wide receiver, running back, tight end, flex them, and then set an amount of flex players. Since it is the playoffs, since you're not going to be making start-sit decisions, you might as well go deeper there. You might as well go something like 8 flex spots. I know it sounds crazy deep, but trust me, it's fun. And in those later rounds, it does allow you to load up on some of the deeper guys from the teams you like to go to the Super Bowl. So in that instance here, the idea of Kelce being relative to his position, like we would say in season-long drafts, well, that's an irrelevant argument the way that I set up the rankings. Kelce's just a valuable skill position player. That's really what this is. He's really good. He has great rapport with Mahomes. He has major upside. He's basically a wide receiver who plays tight end. So he comes in at 6 for me. At 7, Tyreek Hill. I don't have to explain the upside that he has. You know that. And again, you're looking at this for the major juice that you're going to get out of that offense. Now, let's be clear. By these rankings, if you drafted Mahomes, you're not going to get the stack. So that also is something you need to consider. Stacking is a very viable strategy in these leagues. You're not going to get that stack. You're not going to get the stack with Thomas and Brees. You might get a Lamar stack, though. You might get a Lamar stack. So anyway, it's unlikely you'll get that stack. However, if you took Mahomes at 4 and Tyreek Hill was there on the comeback when you're up again at 9? Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. At 8 for me, George Kittle, same sort of scenario as Kelsey, wide receiver skill set, tight end body. He's tremendous and really the best receiving threat on that team. I love me some Debo. I think Manny Sanders obviously is intriguing, but man, oh man, George Kittle with the consistency as well. Love it. All right, so at number 9, I went Mark Ingram. And the thought process here is that while I do have Kansas City going to the Super Bowl, I just wasn't quite willing enough to put Damian Williams ahead of him. I have Damian Williams at 10, but the thing that I like about Mark Ingram, and I do fully expect him to play next week because he gets these 2 weeks off to rest his calf. What I like about Mark Ingram is the extreme efficiency. And over the long term, yes, efficiency is going to decline, or regress to the mean, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. You know the whole argument. We're not over the long term here. We're looking at this in a super short-term window, and really we're only looking at it over the next month. Can he keep the efficiency up? I think he can, and especially what I love about the efficiency is it's a byproduct of what this team does in the red zone. They are so good in the red zone. I like Mark Ingram a lot here. So Damian Williams, as I mentioned, at 10. I'm happy that we've seen over the last couple weeks here the Damian Williams we had hoped to see the whole season. Of course, that stinks for season-long fantasy, but it is good for right now. So we're going to ride that one, the hot streak that he's had recently here, and talk about efficiency. He's also been off the charts as well. At 11 and 12, here are 2 guys who I only have playing 1 game, but again, I think they could put up more points in 1 game than a lot of guys were taking behind them. Aaron Jones and Derrick Henry. Aaron Jones led the league in rushing touchdowns in the regular season. Derrick Henry in rushing yards. Both of them are big-time factors of what their teams like to do. And we don't know Jones' matchup yet, but we know that Henry is going to face a very difficult matchup. Now, I'll talk more about it on the show tomorrow, but I could still see a heavy workload for Henry. I mean, if he goes out and sees 26 touches, something like that, 30 touches, he may not run for 100 yards. Maybe get you 95, though. Maybe get you a touchdown, I still think you could get major points out of him, even in a losing effort from the Titans. And same thing with Aaron Jones. 13, DeAndre Hopkins. I was tempted to put him a little bit higher, but I did prioritize some running backs ahead of him. It is a tough matchup to kick things off. I think they get through, but if they get through, I mean, the matchups aren't going to get really necessarily any easier for Hopkins, so it puts a little bit of a damper on things. And Will Fuller's status certainly impacts the overall outlook for Hopkins here in the playoffs. Going down to 14, we have Jared Cook. Don't love the matchup, at least initially, for Jared Cook, but again, if you get 4 games out of him, he's certainly going to reach value for this spot. At 15, Julian Edelman. He says he feels better than he has in a while, so that's a good thing. It's tricky, though, because he is wearing down. He is obviously a playoff standout, but he is wearing down. So I think you get 2 games out of him in this spot, though. You could be 17, 18 catches in those 2 games. Could be 175, 180 yards and two touchdowns over those 2 games. He's going to put up some numbers, provided that he is a man of his word and he is actually feeling better. At 16, another guy who's feeling better, Dalvin Cook, a guy who I also have only playing 1 game. Not the best matchup for Cook in this one, but you would expect the team to lean heavily on him. At 17, Raheem Mostert. There's still a committee in that backfield, although he is very much the lead of that committee. And if you believe the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl, then certainly I'm a little low on him here. Maybe he might be right there with Damian Williams and Mark Ingram. At 18, Latavius Murray. So again, I'm taking Dalvin Cook ahead of Latavius Murray. Even if Cook played 1 game and Murray plays 4, there is certainly the chance that he outscores his old teammate. That is, Dalvin Cook outscores Latavius Murray. Devontae Adams at 19, another one-and-done guy who could put up a ton in that one game based on the volume that we've seen out of him. Then Mark Andrews at 20. There's a very real possibility you could have that Lamar Jackson stack right there with Mark Andrews, and I don't mind that one bit. We'll get you up through, let's get you up through 25 here. 21, Deshaun Watson. I mean, hey, he was the number 2 fantasy quarterback in the regular season. This is this one comes down to, do you think they beat Buffalo? Because if you do, then yes, this is right where you should be drafting him, maybe even a tad low. If you don't, this is way too early to draft him. So it really depends on it. I think they do, so that's why I have him here. At 22, James White. I like the matchup in the first round here. It's the only matchup I kind of really have any confidence in. I mean, it's a tough one. On the Titans side, it's a brutal one, but not that great for the Patriots either, but I do think we see some James White there. Tyler Lockett comes in at 23. Again, do you think they win? If you don't, then maybe I'm too high on him. 24, Debo, and then 25, Marshawn Lynch. So with Lynch, he looked rusty. He did. But he is Marshawn Lynch, and he is going to get the rock, and especially when they get in the red zone area. Let's face it, Chris Carson was heavily used in the red zone. Even though the team loves to throw when they get in the red zone, they were also running the ball as well. So Lynch is going to get some valuable touches there. And again, if they get by Philly, then this is going to be a nice spot to take him. I'll give you 26 as well. It's DK Metcalf since he's on the same team. I'm not going to give these all away. Honestly, for me to do all 175, not only would that be a very boring podcast, but all right, let's just put it that way. It'd be a very freaking boring podcast. So the list is there at PFF.com. The cheat sheet is up. Go check it out and use it to help yourself in these draft style leagues. Tomorrow on the podcast, we are going to break down the matchups for the week. So we'll go game by game, upgrades, downgrades, one and done plays, DFS options, and player props all in one show. It'll be a little bit longer, but we're not, we never go too long. I know your time is valuable, so we won't go too long on that show. In the meantime, PFF.com is the website, at Jeff Ratcliffe on Twitter and Instagram. Rat Packers, follow me there. Otherwise, I'll catch you on the flip side for another edition of the pod. For PFF, I'm Jeff Ratcliffe, and I'm out of here.